Good afternoon. This is Dr. James Marion recording from the Susan and Leonard Feinstein Inflammatory Bowel Disease Center at Mount Sinai Medical Center in New York City. And welcome to another of our third Thursday, although they tend to come out not necessarily on the third Thursday at the IBD Center Facebook live broadcast. And welcome. Today we're going to be discussing the clinical trials that we have ongoing in the office. And we have a very special guest. We're going to highlight some of those trials with our very special guest. It's Gabriela Perez Evelan. Gabriela is a certified clinical research coordinator and is an essential team member. Welcome, Gabby.
Welcome.
And I'm so glad you were able to join me. Gabriela is sort of a combination coordinator, researcher, encyclopedia. Whenever I have a question about a study, I don't know how Gabriela does it, but she always seems to know. And it's really a pleasure having you on our team, Gabriela. You've been really very helpful.
Thank you.
Before, during, and then now after COVID, now that things are starting to gear up again. So I wanted to highlight some of our clinical trials, and in fact, we're going to highlight some of our what we call open label trials. So this means that if you enroll in any of these three trials, you will be getting treatment. There is not a placebo group in any of the studies that we're going to be discussing today. Placebo-controlled trials are crucial, but these are three that we thought we would talk about. And it's very important that you discuss whether or not you're a candidate for these trials with your own gastroenterologist, and we'll have information on how to reach the IBD Center here if you're interested in enrolling any of these trials. So Gabriela, I wanted to talk just for a minute about the first trial. It's an unusual trial because it's open label, meaning all patients get treatment, and we know what treatment they're getting. And it's comparing a new drug called risankizumab to ustekinumab, which is not a new drug, but an established drug for patients with Crohn's disease. So can you talk to me a little bit about what kind of patient might be interested in this type of trial?
Okay, so the patients that are eligible for this trial can only have failed one class of drugs, and in this case, it would be anti-TNF. So that would be Remicade, Humira. If they've been exposed previously to Entyvio or to Stelara, they would not be eligible. They would also have to have moderate to severe Crohn's disease, and this is determined by their symptoms and they're endoscopically. So the patients would have to be scoped during the screening process to make sure that they have enough active disease. And there's a score that we use in Crohn's disease called the SESED score, which patients might be familiar if they've seen this in their colonoscopy reports. And they would have to have a score of 6 or greater, or 4 or greater if it's just ileal disease. So the good thing about this trial is the patients are guaranteed that they will be getting drug in either arm, and we know which arm they're randomized to. So if the day they come in for their randomization visit, which is basically the day where we determine what treatment they're getting, we know right away if it's Stelara or risankizumab. So for Stelara, it would just be one infusion, like the induction infusion, and then they go on to getting sub-Q injections every 8 weeks. And for the risankizumab, they would be getting infusions every 4 weeks for a 12-week period. If after the 12 weeks they do not show response, which is basically determined by their symptoms, then they get another 12 weeks of induction so it'd be every 4 weeks, so up to 24 weeks, 6 months. And after that, if they're still not responding, then they would have to come out of the trial. And so the trial is 48 weeks long, so almost a year. And then they're scoped at screening, then they're scoped again after 12 weeks, and then they're scoped again at the end of the trial. If after the 48 weeks, the patients are continuing to respond to the risankizumab arm, they would go on to a open label extended arm. So like treatment wouldn't stop because risankizumab is still not approved for Crohn's. But in the case if they are randomized to the Stelara arm after the 48 weeks, then they would have to get a standard of care.
Well, that sounds great. So this is basically Crohn's disease of moderate
to severe
disease. So after we go over the, the risks and benefits and the consent, they would be screened to see whether or not they're actually
If they're eligible,
in
yep.
the trial and eligible. If they've gotten Entyvio or vedolizumab, not can't even be screened.
No,
and would
or
be excluded.
Stelara.
But if they've had an anti-TNF like Remicade or Humira and failed it, then
Yeah.
they would be candidates.
Exactly.
So this sounds like a real winner. And you know, again, it sounds like they get the standard of care that we normally deliver, but
Yes.
maybe a little more intense, an extra
Mhm.
scope, more
Yeah.
blood tests, that sort of thing. But it sounds like a great option for folks who are who failed that first TNF, anti-TNF biologic. That's great. And there's another one, and this is more for ulcerative colitis patients that you and I were talking about earlier, and it's called the VERDICT trial. And
Yeah.
these acronyms don't mean as much, but it's for ulcerative colitis patients. And what I love about this trial is that it is going to direct and hopefully change how it is that we treat to target. You know, we treat to certain targets for patients. And my patients have heard me talk about this, and our audience has heard me talk about this before, how sometimes getting off of corticosteroids is a target or a goal. Other goals of treatment might be getting the symptoms better. Other goals of treatment might be making the lining of the bowel look better and healed on colonoscopy, or finally getting the biopsies to look as if they've healed. So the debate going on among IBDologists and gastroenterologists is, well, which is the best thing to target when you're trying to treat patients with moderate to severe ulcerative colitis? So this study is, I think, a brilliant way to do it. The patients are going to be randomized. They're going to be treated open label. Vedolizumab or Entyvio is the main treatment. And either group 1 has to get off a steroid, group 2 has to get off of steroids and have their symptoms resolved. Group 2 not only has to get off a steroid, but their endoscopy needs to look much better and their symptoms need to be better. And then finally, group 3 has to hit the trifecta, meaning they're off steroids, they feel better, their endoscopy is healed, and their biopsies show actual normalization. So that really is pretty amazing. And they're going to be randomized, stratified based on different things, whether or not they're currently on steroids, whether or not they're on immunosuppressives, whether or not they're on anti-TNFs currently or ever. So it's a real life, real clinical scenario study. And I think it's brilliant. It lasts 80 weeks. Patients are followed up every 16 weeks. The vedolizumab is key. I think, you know, that to me is pretty great. Now, if somebody's getting topical therapy or their steroid roller coasters going up and down too much right up to the beginning, if they've been treated with other drugs like ustekinumab or tofacitinib, then they can't be in this study, obviously. But I think this is a pretty exciting one. It's going to be very difficult to sort of manage all the data, but we're up to doing that, thanks to you, Gabby. I'm sorry. I think this is going to be a real game changer once we enroll it. And the good news is everybody's treated.
Yeah, everyone gets treatment. Yep, sorry to interrupt you. And like one of the limiting factors in the criteria would be that they can only have failed one class of drug. So similar to the previous trial we discussed. So like if they failed Remicade, Humira, that's fine because it's the same class of drug. But if they failed Humira and Stelara, then they wouldn't be eligible.
Right.
Yeah.
So the last one I want to chat about, and again, this is a very exciting drug that we just had our, you know, site initiation sort of orientation and visit over, which is looking at, it's an open label study. Now this one's for Crohn's disease patients.
Yes.
Who will be getting an interleukin-2 injection. Now, interleukin-2 is a modulator drug, meaning it calms the immune system down. It has not been used in this setting in Crohn's disease. And this is what's known as a 1B/2A study to look at the low dose efficacy of this agent to try to find which dose is the best dose to use. So it's sort of a dose ranging as well as an efficacy study.
Yeah.
which is my understanding of it. Any other thoughts on this one, Gabby?
So this is for patients with Crohn's disease to moderate severe disease. The good thing about this trial, it allows patients with ostomies, because that is exclusionary in most trials.
Right.
So there's a cap of 50% of patients. So we're looking to enroll 30 patients in total. So we could potentially enroll 15 patients with ostomies. So the way this trial works is the first part of the trial, it lasts 8 weeks. So they go through a screening process. They come into the IBD center. We make sure they meet all the criteria, and they need to have a colonoscopy. And after the 8 weeks, they have to have another colonoscopy. And if they qualify, so it would be daily sub-Q injections, where the patients would have to come in once a week to pick up the the injections in the pharmacy, in the IBD center. But it's definitely a trial that is good for patients that have failed multiple drugs, and as I said, patients that have ostomies.
Yeah, the patients with ostomies are routinely excluded from the clinical trials, and that I think has been a real challenge for all of us. And I'm excited that we're going to be able to include them for this study. So, again, this is sort of a new take on inclusion criteria that I find encouraging, and I think is going to serve our patients with ostomies well.
Yeah.
So listen, Gabby, I can't thank you enough for joining me to run down these highlighted studies. And I think you and I agree. These studies are crucial
Yeah.
for introducing new agents for these diseases. One of the biggest problems with Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis treatments is that even the best ones simply don't work well enough, meaning,
Yeah.
we're getting 60 to 70% response rates for many of these treatments. And so there's still a lot of work to be done. Our black bag of treatment is better than it used to be, but it simply isn't good enough. And if we don't do this hard work of doing the clinical trials, then we're unlikely to find the next new treatment. And I think some of these new small molecules, some of these comparison drugs, some of these, like the Verdict trial, where we're actually trying to see what target is going to serve our patients best for treatment, will get us a long way. So if you're watching this and you're a physician, we're going to have information for you to be able to contact us if you have patients who you think might be candidates, and you can refer them for evaluation and screening. And if you're a patient, even, we're going to have information for you so that you can connect with our research office and the IBD Center if you think you are a candidate for any of these trials. So, Gabby, any other last thoughts?
Well, with clinical trials, patients get a higher level of care, like it's much closer follow-up, and the treatment and all the visits and everything is covered by the trials. So that definitely helps the patients. And we are looking forward to hearing from you.
Yes, Gabby, I really, really appreciate. I know this was a last minute step in, and next time I'll make Sari come in and do this, no matter how she's feeling. I'm only kidding, Sari. I hope you feel better. Listen, thank you again, Gabby. This is
Of
Dr.
course.
James Marion, recording from the Susan Leonard Feinstein Inflammatory Bowel Disease Center at Mount Sinai Medical Center in New York City. And I look forward to seeing you at our next Third Thursday next month.